Representative Duffy.
Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Mr. Chairman. I want to talk to you about too big to fail. We had all heard 2 years ago when Dodd-Frank passed that this was going to be our silver bullet to address this issue of too big to fail and to make sure that the taxpayers wouldn't hold the bag should one of these large institutions fail, to make sure that it doesn't roll our whole economy. And I guess I would argue that Dodd-Frank hasn't fully and completely addressed the issue of too big to fail, and it still exists. I think it's come up more recently as we look at what's happening in Europe. But here at home, it's come up with regard to J.P. Morgan, and they experienced a $2 billion loss that might go up to $4 or $5 billion. And some have argued that the Volcker rule would have addressed, had it been implemented, and it's going to come shortly, had it been implemented, it would have addressed this massive loss from J.P. Morgan. One of my concerns, though, is as you look at the Volcker rule and you look at these trades, it becomes very difficult to determine what is prop trading and what is macro hedging. And so as you sit in a classroom, it might be easy to work through the Volcker rule. But in practice, isn't it very difficult to use the Volcker rule to stop the issue of J.P. Morgan?
Well, let me just say in the specific case, we're still investigating it, and I don't want to talk very much about the specific case, but in general, yes, differentiating proprietary trading from legitimate hedging activities and market-making activities is inherently very difficult, and regulators are looking at 19,000 comment letters and trying to figure out how to do that as best as possible. The one comment I would make, which my colleague Governor Tarullo made yesterday, is that one requirement of the Volcker rule is that there be very extensive documentation, explanations to the supervisors in advance for complex hedges, as well as auditing and appropriate incentives for the executives involved in the activities of the traders. So, at a minimum, if the Volcker rule had been in place, we would have known a lot more about this whole situation, and that might have been helpful.
In the classroom theory, I agree with. I'm not opposed to it. I'm concerned about the implementation. But isn't really the silver lining here that there was no taxpayer loss here? J.P. Morgan had the appropriate capital requirements to cover their loss, which is what you guys are talking about later on today when you're going to talk about Basel III. Isn't the real issue here not thousands of new rules and a 2,000-page bill, but really increasing the capital requirements of our American banks, making sure that they have more skin in the game and that the taxpayer isn't going to bear that loss, but the investors in those banks are going to be responsible for the losses of bad trades?
I agree with you entirely. The reason for high capital requirements, and we're looking to greatly increase capital requirements, is because we're not going to be able to anticipate everything that could happen. And the good news here is that J.P. Morgan's losses are a very small fraction of there's a very substantial capital base. There have been losses to the shareholders, as you say, but there's not any risk that the firm will fail or that taxpayers will be in danger in any way. So yes, capital is extremely important, and I agree with you 100% on that.
And so in essence, we increase those ratios. And I imagine you would, and I don't have much time, but you would agree with the SIFI surcharge, making sure that our larger banks are required to hold more capital. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Just quickly, I want to pivot to sometimes, and I know you have to do this, but when you talk to us, what you say can be open to interpretation. You do a very nice job of that. But as you're talking about the cliff, as we're talking about taxes specifically, are you telling us if we allow nothing to happen and we see all of these taxes increase, the Bush tax cuts, the Obama tax cuts go away, there is going to be a direct impact on economic growth and job creation?
I'm looking not just at the taxes, but also the sequester and the end of the payroll tax and everything else. Yes, I think that I mean, of course, economic forecasting is an imperfect science, but everything we understand about fiscal policy suggests it would be a significant short-term effect, yes.
Okay. So in essence, you're not here to advise us, but if you were, are you telling us extend them?
I'd tell you to try to avoid a situation in which you have a massive cut in spending and increase in taxes all hitting at one moment, as opposed to trying to spread them out over time in some way that will give create less short-term drag on the U.S. economy.
Well, I appreciate your testimony. I yield back.
Thank you. Senator Lee.